I'll start off with the President's statement. Tonight, the Board of Trustees is meeting in a called board work session meeting. The board welcomes and appreciates comments and input from the community. Open forum is provided at each meeting to allow the public to address the board. There will be 2 open forums tonight. Open forum number 1 is to hear requests regarding agenda items only. Open forum number 2 is to hear requests or make comments regarding non-agenda items and will be heard at the end of the meeting. Those addressing the board are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker should identify his or her name, group affiliation, if any, and make a brief presentation with an identified solution if one is sought. Remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole. Oral presentations may not include charges against any employee or board member by name. It is my responsibility to determine if the person addressing the board has attempted to resolve a concern informally or through the district's complaint policies. If not, the speaker will be directed to follow the appropriate policy. The board requests that all presentations be made in a courteous, respectful, and professional manner and asks that speakers monitor their own behavior. If you wish to speak during one of the open forums, please fill out one of the cards located on the table in the entry hall. Dr. Harrington, any comments?
Yes, I've got a couple pieces. The first one, first two, we've got some thank yous I wanted to take a moment to share. The employee banquet, we had a wonderful employee banquet, but we really wanted to make sure that we thank Linda Storr, Lynette Gardner, and the PR and marketing team that put that event together. That was a great night, over 800 people, and so we just want to thank them for all their planning and decorating. Also, our VIPS brunch. We wanted to thank Rachel Metcalf, our VIPS program liaison, who put that together. So we really, that was another a very nice event. We enjoyed our time there. And then the only other piece I wanted to fill you in, we had last Thursday, TCC downtown, we had the area superintendent summit with TCC, and just working on ways to continue looking at how TCC can offer any new or unique options for our kids, and so we're going to be working with them to see any ideas that they have, that we have, and we'll continue that partnership that we've had for a long time.
Okay, great. Any clarifications?
The information I have was in the Friday update.
Okay, thank you.
So I do have a clarification on the Friday update, Joe, and Joe and I did just speak about this, and based on timing, this is the only real time to clarify this question, but the information that was in the Friday update pertaining to graduation parking was the first time we saw that there is an opportunity for a deal with Dickies for paying for student parking for graduation, cutting a deal for, instead of $20 parking, it would be $15 parking for the students. When we had our presentation at the last board meeting, you know, it was presented to us that parking would be $20. And a few things have happened since then. One is we have also identified some $10 parking, but we've also identified this opportunity to purchase parking on behalf of our graduates. The information that was provided in the Friday update was that it would cost about $22,000 to pay for a ticket for each graduate. You know, when they get their cap and their gown, they would also be given a ticket to graduation. My question was, are we going to be able to do this as a school district, to be able to provide these tickets to the students? And that's what I'm seeking clarification on, because based on the timing, there's not another opportunity for us to discuss this. This is not a board decision, and this is not an action item, so we can't take any action. But this is a decision that the superintendent can make because it's under the $100,000 threshold as far as an expenditure. You know, to Joe's credit, he doesn't want to do anything that the board doesn't support. So I want to voice my support for doing this for a number of reasons. One, $22,000 is not a lot of money to be able to have the kids show up for free instead of paying for their own parking at their own graduation. Two, we've identified that there's $22,000 available for us to do it this year. Three, we've never had it at Dickies Arena before. I think it's going to be a beautiful venue, but I also think it would be a nice gesture to our graduates not to make them pay to go to their own graduation. There are some other school districts who are looking at this. I think you've seen it in the news over the last couple of weeks. I had a conversation with Conrad and with Joe a couple of weeks ago. That's what prompted the discussion with Dickies to be able to do the $20 parking at a discount to us. If there's a consensus on this board that we would be able to walk out of here and say, Joe, we would support this type of decision being made, I think it would happen. I'm not directing Joe to do anything. We can't, as a board, direct him to do anything. But I do think that if he could hear from us and he could take our temperature on whether this is something that we support, he would have what he needed to be able to go and make this happen. So, Joe, I would just like to say that, you know, in a school district who is as economically disadvantaged as many of our families are, to be able to provide free parking for our graduates is something I would wholeheartedly support. And I would ask that this board, if you feel the same way, give Joe that feeling from you, so he has some thought from this board on where you want to go for graduation.
All right, well, I'm not going to make it a discussion item right now, but if any of you, Chris has made his,
I thought it was 50,000.
That was something else.
That was something else.
We could buy all parking
Yeah. we
for
could pay
$50,000,
all the parking.
or
Yeah.
we could give each graduate a ticket for $22,000.
Yeah. Yeah, but I encourage you each to call Dr. Harrington, you know, tomorrow and let him know your feelings on that. You know, it's not something that's an agenda item right now, and if we start talking consensus, it's basically equivalent to having a vote. So, you know, I'd rather each of you, you know, give Dr. Harrington a call and have a private conversation with him and let him know your feelings on it.
Please do that, and we've got to do it quickly, so don't let this get away. If you support this, please talk to Joe this week, because there's timing that we've got to get this done. So if there's a consensus from the board, it will get done. So if this is something that you can support, please talk to Joe about it.
Okay, all right.
And Matt, we are different by design, so we don't have to follow every other district. We can be a leader in this area.
Yeah, okay. Open forum number 1. All right, let's see. Is it Heather Gradkey? Sorry. Is discussing item 9.01. You'll have 3 minutes. Your time will come up on the screen, and it'll turn yellow then red as you get to the end.
On this screen?
Yeah, it should be up on that screen.
Okay.
And then that's-
My name is Heather Gradke, and I'm a mom to 4. 2022 marks the 20th year my husband and I have had a student in HEBISD. About the staffing, or I'm sorry, about the athletic plan. My daughter is currently an 8th grader at Central, and I was made aware of this plan 2 weeks ago by another parent. In all transparency, I'll have a 10th grader at Bell next year, so picking up at one school actually sounds dreamy, but I know this isn't the situation for all of our families, and I actually have a lot of questions, so I'm gonna try to rapid fire here. A big question, and probably my biggest one, is how does this affect cheerleading? The teams have been set, fees paid, uniforms bought. Who will she cheer for? Will cheer be combined with the high school? And for simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna assume no. But if not, when she has practice after school, how does she get there if she's at the high school for athletics? Am I expected to pick her up from high school, take her back to Central for cheer? Is there a plan for fine arts to follow? I imagine band, choir, orchestra, et cetera, would like to compete more competitively at this level. And from a logistics perspective, and this is probably where most of my questions come from. So they're gonna be bused, I'm hearing, perhaps, for athletics, and so is there room at the high school for all of these students? Are there lockers, et cetera? Isn't the athletics period longer in high school? Currently, our junior high kids have 7 periods, so 6 other classes. High school only have 4. Are they gonna miss class time to be bused there? Will they have an option to stay at the junior high for athletics on days that they have club or other events after school, or are they going to be forced to choose between the two? What about students that have working parents, have to walk home from school? How do we manage that situation? Is there a plan to get those students back to their junior high? How do we organize this so that all students have equal opportunity to this, to athletics? Last but not least, what does all of this cost the taxpayers? The extra busing, the extra staffing, the, all the coordination of this. So it's my heart that as many of our students that want to participate in athletics have the opportunity to do so. And I love that our kids have more opportunity to make the team in 9th grade than they do in other districts. And I think this is something that really sets HEB apart, and I love that. But at the same time, I also want to be competitive at the 9th grade level. So how do we accomplish both? I'm wondering if we've considered keeping 9th grade teams and arranging the season so that our 5 junior highs play each other. Our cheerleaders could continue to cheer for those 9th grade teams, but we also give 9th graders an opportunity to try out for the 9th grade high school super team. At least then we, meaning the parents and the students, have a choice in the matter. So I'm confident that there are countless other scenarios that need to be considered, and it's my opinion soliciting the community and coaches for feedback would be the most effective way to really flush this out and give this plan the best chance for success. So I would encourage the district to engage the community more directly before implementing the plan.
Okay, thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. See, at this time, the board will be going into closed session. Pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551, the board will adjourn to closed session pursuant to sections 551.071 to 551.074.
See you on the other side.
All right.
So, Now he's on a roll. Here we go. I love good coffee. How was Jackson?
All right, the board will now reconvene into open session. We are to section 6, action items on human resources. Item 6.01, consider approval of Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Administration. I will accept a motion.
I move that the board appoint Brandon Johnson as the Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Administration.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the board approve Brandon Johnson as the Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Administration. Please vote.
I don't have anything yet. The suspense is really.
That motion passes. All right, Mr. Johnson is here with us this evening. We always like to acknowledge new people to the HEB family, so if you could please stand up and feel free to introduce anybody you brought with you.
So, first of all, I'm excited and honored for the privilege to serve principals and staff here in HEB community. And tonight I have with me my son, Knox, and my wife, Danny, and my daughter, Olivia, and this is Laurel. So, glad that they could be here.
All right, welcome. See, our next item is consider approval of Coordinator of Guidance and Counseling and Student Services. I will accept the motion.
I move the board approve the appointment of Stacy Force as the Coordinator of Guidance, Counseling, and Student Services.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve Stacy Force as Coordinator of Guidance, Counseling, and Student Services. Please vote. And that motion passes. Hello, Ms. Horse.
I just want to say I'm really excited to go into this position. I have with me some of my best friends tonight, my sister, several of my current coworkers and former coworkers, and will become friends and family to me. So I'm really excited to continue this journey in HEB and hopefully follow in the footsteps of Carl Goffin and do a great job supporting and advocating for our counselors in the district.
Thank you. Congratulations. All right, 6.03, consider approval of elementary assistant principal. I will accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the appointment of Kristen Harrison as Assistant Principal of Lakewood Elementary School.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the board approve the appointment of Kristen Harris as the assistant principal at Lakewood Elementary School. Please vote. And that motion passes. Congratulations, Ms. Harris.
Thank you so much. Tonight I have my wonderful husband, this is Brian, and this is Brooklyn. And then my parents, Michael and Denise Lucky. I'm so excited to serve this Lakewood community. Wow, what an honor for you all to be here tonight. Thank you to Katie Harrell for your leadership and guidance, getting me here, and of course Cameron Ramirez. We're taking a chance, and I'm looking forward to your mentorship and to be with this community and to be with this school and to serve the faculty, the students, and these parents. I'm so excited for this journey, so thank you very much.
Congratulations. All right. Item 6.04, Consider approval of elementary assistant principal. I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board approve the appointment of Sonia Burrow as the assistant principal at Meridian Elementary.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the appointment of Sandra Burrow as assistant principal at Meridian Elementary. Sonia, I'm sorry. I apologize. Please vote. And that motion passes.
I want to thank you guys for this opportunity. I'm super excited to get to know everybody more thoroughly. My husband, Lonnie Burrow, and my daughter Sydney is here, and I have some friends that have come along to support me. So thank you. I'm so excited. And then I have Carrie and Deb, who were such great mentors this year, but I can do.
All right, congratulations. All right, 6.05, consider approval of employment recommendations. I will accept the motion.
I move the board approve the employments as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve employments as submitted. Please vote.
I got knocked out.
It's been doing that to us too. And that motion passes. So there are a couple of names on this list that we would like to recognize. I believe that the individuals are here. So for Bell High School Athletic Coordinator, Brock Pimbleton, who is currently the boys basketball coach, head basketball coach at Bell High School, and was previously the girls' head basketball coach at Bell High School, will be the new Bell Athletic Coordinator. Is Mr. Pimbleton here? Hello, sir.
My wife Courtney and my daughter McKenna, who's also a 2013 graduate of Bell.
And
Teacher of the Year. And Teacher of the Year. Very excited about serving in LD Bell High School and our coaches and HEB community.
All right, congratulations. And we'd also like to recognize Lance Newman, who will be the new choir director at Trinity High School. He'll be returning home to us after having spent the past school year as a high school choral director in Arlington ISD. So, Mr. Newman.
My wife Nadia with me tonight. We both went to Trinity High School and actually met her in the choir program there. I'm very excited to be back. Thank you to Mr. Chandler and Mr. Harris for bringing me back. Thank you.
Congratulations. All right, so we're into, I'll let
Give them a
everyone.
minute.
Yeah. All right, so next we'll be reviewing some items for our investment department. Item 7.01, review annual approval of investment policy and strategy. Does anyone have any questions on this agenda item? Item 7.02, qualified brokers for investment transactions. Any questions? Next item, investment officer training sources. Any questions? 7.04, resolution designating investment officers. No questions. Item 7.05, resolution amending authorized representative for Logic Investment Pool. Any questions on this item? Next item is resolution amending authorized representatives for Lone Star Investment Pool. No questions. Resolution amending authorized representatives for Tex Pool Investment Pool. No questions. All right, that brings us down to financial statements for the month of March. Mr. Williams.
I have a question. Since the Dow and the NASDAQ is falling, how does our future look in our investments?
It should start stepping up a little bit.
I know the interest rate went up,
Right, but sometimes
balance out.
there's a lag there, but it should start as the Fed discount rate goes up, investments should follow sometime down the road, but it's not instantaneous. So should help us. Should help us, yeah. The higher the rates are, the better that is for us in the investment world. We used to actually count on that money as revenue for our budgets, but of course in the last 10 or 15 years we hadn't been able to. So that is the silver lining to that, to the rates going up, I guess. Yes, sir. Okay, where did everybody go? This is the fun stuff. So let's look at the financial statements for the month ending March 31st, 2022. We'll start off with the general fund. You can see we had a fund balance of $208,301,381. That represents revenues over expenditures of $65,432,057. Total expenditures as of 3/31, we lost a day there in March somehow, are 51.88% of the budget. As you can see up there in the kind of in the right top, that's 7/12 of our budget is 58%. So we're below where we should be at 7/12 of going through 7 months out of the year already. So overall expenditures are down slightly due to, as I mentioned last month, the payroll reclassification in the ESSER 2 funds. That'll probably continue throughout the remainder of the year. Will be just a little skewed because of that happening. But everything other than that is tracking very normally for the general fund. Next. The Wrestler report, that can be referenced on page 7 of your financials. Payroll, $88,296,136 for the period, is currently at 86%. As you know, we typically run around 87%, but again, that's skewed slightly because of the reclassification of those ESSER funds. Utilities, the second highest expense, running at 2%, is $2,543,276, and instructional supplies, the third highest expense at 1%, is $1,398,490. Child nutrition, or the food service fund, we have a fund balance of $8,720,137. That represents revenues over expenditures of $2,337,791. That the details can be referenced on page 8 and 9. Total expenditures as of 3/31 are at 50.46% of the budget. So again, underneath the 58% through 7 months out of the year. And as I say every month, they continue to do very well. We're actually in the process of trying to spend down some of her fund balance to stay in compliance because they don't like us having too much money there. So. Yes. As of this morning. think a lot of them just aren't working. I mean, we're very competitive. Cicely could speak more to this. Very competitive, what we pay compared to other school districts. But I think we tend to lose to the Sonics, the Walmarts, those kinds of places. And we actually have some people leave, and then some of them will end up coming back after they decide that it's not as great as they thought it was. But it's just a lack of general workforce. For food service, custodials, and other place, we're getting hit really, really hard. The difference in food service is we can cut down on our serving lines, which takes more time to feed kids, but we can manage more easier than we can, like with, say, custodial, because we still got the same amount of buildings to clean, whether we are down 40 custodians or 2. We still got lots of space to clean. So that custodial is a lot bigger issue. I don't say it's any more important. It's just we can manage the cafeteria a lot easier than we can custodial. Yes, I mean, there's ways we can move things around there that, and to the credit of our employees too, I will say we've asked our teachers to kick in. They're emptying their own trash. Everybody's, picking up and doing what they can where they can to help out. So we're making it work. And hats off to those people. They do a really fine job, and can't say enough good things about them. Anyway, food service financially is doing quite well. As I say, revenues over expenditures of $2.337 million. So, next one, please. Debt service fund, referenced on page 10 and 11 of your financial details. We have a fund balance of $43,330,836. That's revenues over expenditures of $30,350,159. So you can look down there about the 4th bullet point. Our next bond payment is, debt service payment is due August 15th and for $29,097,097. So you can see we've hit that target of collections that money's in the bank, ready to go. We'll just send it out when it gets here. That fund is, of course, tracking normally, and it's fed by tax collections. Pre-K, CK, referenced on page 13 and 14, we have a fund balance of $272,125. That's revenues over expenditures of $252,110. They continue to do very well. Again, they're at 56.82% of the budget, below the 58%. Program's doing well.
Okay, we're adding one at which school?
That's the recommendation, is one more at Spring Garden.
How many's been on the waiting list?
I believe around 88, yes.
How many can I take?
22.
I think it's a space issue.
We'll continue to monitor that, but we don't want to jump out too far and then end up with excess, because again, this is a self-funded program. So we're going to continue to monitor that, but it's a good problem. If we've got this kind of interest, we can continue to watch and look for the possibility. But again, I would be cautious about moving too quickly. But it is definitely looking, this list looks as strong as it's ever looked at this point.
Absolutely. Special revenue funds, as you've heard me say many times, this is a multiple funds consisting of federal, state, and local programs. Your details are on page 16 through 18. They are self-sufficient. Basically, what we get in is what we budget and what we end up trying to spend. Now, a lot of those funds do roll forward every year, so we don't necessarily spend 100% of them by the year end, but we don't lose them either. They're currently a $6.4 million deficit. That's due to again, the ESSER II reclassification. We haven't collected those revenues back from applying for those reimbursements for now what is 7 months' salary, and you'll see that now through the end of the year. So you'll get tired of hearing that probably. So total expenditures as of 3/31 are 26.79%. But then again, with special revenue funds, that number's skewed because we just haven't filed and gotten all our revenues collected back from those programs yet. So, but everything's tracking as expected. Campus Activity Fund, fund balance of $3,054,473. That's revenues of $101,953, revenues over expenditures. Those details are on page 19 and 20, and those activities are tracking normally and doing very well for the year, as we would normally expect them to. 2018 Bond Fund, that has a fund balance of $27,569,267. That is expenditures over revenue of $5,705,249, because as you've heard me say every month, we don't get any new revenue in there unless we sell some bonds, and we have no bonds to sell at this time. So that will continue to just be an expenditure. Funds, only revenues we get are some interest revenue off of those monies we have invested, so which is not near what we're spending out of it. And that's just about finished up. The remainder of those 2018 funds, as you know, we have decided to use those to build or to pay for about half of the Bel Air project. And the locally defined capital projects fund, that has a fund balance of $47,967,819. That, again, same thing, expenditures over revenues of $43,457. You can see those details on page 24 and 25. Same as the 18 bonds. Only monies that go into this fund are when you as the board decide that we transfer excess fund balance or wherever we want to transfer it from into that fund to support that fund, and we have not done that this year. Most of these funds are currently being used for the transition center remodel that's or will be used. That's I think those bids are opening up tomorrow. And then the other projects we've discussed at the earlier facilities meeting. So any questions on any of that?
Any questions?
Adobe, there was an announcement last month from TEA that in effect held us harmless for some of our attendance, which in effect I think took us from about 93% to 96% as far as average daily attendance. Is the state going to true that up at some point? When do we expect that money to catch up?
We probably won't see that until we do what's called settle up which will actually happen after the end of our fiscal year, probably usually in September, late September. They'll do a settle up process, and basically they'll recalculate what we are owed based on those first four. They just did that for the first 6 weeks. And then our last 6 weeks, which we have run very good as far as average daily attendance the last 6 weeks. So we're good there. The only place we're going to get hurt a little bit is our enrollment is not as high as what we had originally projected for the current year. So we will take a little bit of a hit there, but nothing that's going to be alarming or something anything we can handle. So, but yeah, they'll settle that up in September, and it'll get booked back to the current year as far as all that goes. So. But we won't actually see those monies and it could be millions and millions of dollars, because basically what the state thinks we're getting and what we budget, because we know what we're getting, sometimes it's way different.
All right, any other questions? All right, let's see, next is budget transfers and amendment request for May 2022.
Let me find those. Gotta find them in here. Where are they? No, here they are. There's nothing that's out of the ordinary for this time of year. We do have some small budget amendments, and you can see them there in your details. 2958 for curriculum and staff development, $6,500 for instructional supplies, 6203 for reading supplies, curriculum staff development, reading supplies. Guidance and counseling, 1,356. Another 2,000 for professional development of guidance and counseling. Furniture purchases for the support staff building at West Hurst, and just a few other small transaction, but I'd be happy to answer questions on anything.
Any questions on any of these transfers?
Just pretty run-of-the-mill transfers. And this time of year, till the end of the year, you may start seeing more and more little ones as we start moving funds around to keep our budgets balanced at the end of the year, so.
Okay. If no questions, we'll move on to the next item. Annual fire inspections. Are there any questions on this? All right, CSP 22-04 replacement for field house roofs at LD Bell and Trinity High Schools. Were there any questions on this?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How come some are $22 a square foot and then some are $35 a square foot?
Okay, I may have to have Josh or Cindy come up and speak to this.
And
The original price was $52 a square foot, and then they did a best offer and got it down to 20 foot.
Actually has to do with if the gyp board has to be replaced. That's what
And
that costs.
I thought gyms were the same size, but one's more than the other. One's 107, one's 84.
Field house at Trinity, it's also got the concession stand on it. The one at Bell's.
Well, the Bell one's more expensive, so I guess that covers the.
There's more damage at Bell than there is at Trinity. We literally can see from the inside to the sky at Bell.
So Josh, it's $35 a square foot, so they think there's more damage as opposed to the one that's $22 a square foot.
It's the gyp and then also decking material that we're looking at replacing. So if we have to do all the gyp versus all of the deck, and they're giving us pricing for all that.
I saw one with 15, so that was kind of, from 15 to 35, that's a big jump.
And to clarify that, they call those the field houses, but they're really storage buildings. I think they may have used to have been field houses back in the day sometime, but,
That's what it's been called since I've been here, so.
but they're really storage facilities.
Restrooms, the storage materials for the cows, for football, for soccer, the field dressing machines, all that stuff, and ice machines.
So the cost of the gypsum that's listed here, that's on top of the actual listed price, right?
It should be a breakout price, so if we have to, what they did, they offered us per square foot cost on those individual, and then,
All right. And someone from our staff makes the call as to whether or not replace this, replace that?
between me and our Armco is our roofing consultant, so between the two of us, we'll be making that call.
Any other questions? All right. Out-of-state, out-of-country student travel. Were there any questions on that trip?
I just have one quick question. Of those students that were picked, are those all of the students in those particular classes, or how, since BTCA is paying for it, how are they picked, or?
Yeah, so Taffy is you're going to catch me off. How were they selected? I can probably get that for you specifically from a board update, but we usually have students every year attend Taffy, and so those two are picked, and they have to qualify, and the other 5 was also some sort of qualification. And so we have done these trips before, and Taffy is an annual thing, and it's really quite an honor when you have 1 or 2 kids get to go to Taffy.
No, I'm very excited about it. I was just curious how that process goes through.
I'll get the exact qualifications, and we'll include that next week. That's easy. I'll ask Lisa. All right, thank you.
All right. Birdville ISD Regional Day School Program for the Deaf. Any questions on that agreement?
This question may have been asked in the past, but I can't remember the answer or whether it was asked. Besides HEB utilizing Birdville, what other districts utilize Birdville for deaf instruction?
I do not know.
Irving?
All right. Any other questions? All right. Renewing the Fiber 11 2022 through 2026 service agreement. Any questions on this agreement? All right. Item 7.15, purchasing proposal renewals. Any questions? A revision to board policy, DEC local compensation and benefits, leaves and absences. Ms. Tuttle?
Are there any questions from the Friday update?
So Cicely, just to clarify, can you speak to the proposed change? Is that we're delegating authority for contractual personnel under principal. Right now it's June to August, and we want to go from March to August?
So that is actually DC local. Under DEC local, which I believe is the item that we're looking at, we're just talking about a revision of adding the word work-related to,
This had to do with the subpoenas.
yes, so we are just providing some additional clarification that the only way that the district actually compensates and does not require a teacher or staff member to use leave for a subpoena is if it's work-related.
So I'm looking at the wrong one?
Yeah, that one will be in the action items. So.
Yeah, DC, that's DC Local 9.02, I believe.
It's attached.
That, no, what Chris was referencing.
So we're on 7.16.
Yes.
Okay, when I click on 7.16, the wrong one may be loaded. Because it has the revisions for March 1st.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, that is true.
Oh, okay, I see it.
we had multiple issues with this particular item and had to upload it multiple times. And
Well, you have DEC, but I'm seeing DC. You're seeing something
that's
different.
exactly what we were having trouble with. Ty and I tried, both of us did multiple times. Can you do that?
Right there.
My sincere apologies for that.
Yeah, the first time I brought it up, it said DEC, and then now it says DC, so it like changed.
It was
Can you-
right yesterday.
Cicely, can you, while
Yes.
we're trying to pull that up, just briefly explain what's going,
This policy, and I'm very sorry for the wrong policy being loaded. This policy is a policy that deals with leave and compensation.
No, that's-
And what we are attempting to do is to provide some clarification. We always look at, when we talk about policies and we get multiple questions about the same thing, we know that there might need to be some clarification. So this currently allows, as the law does, for any employee to be absent for a court appearance that's subpoenaed. But we have employees that sometimes misunderstand and think that an appearance for something such as a divorce or teen court or something of that nature is going to be covered by the district and that we're going to provide leave for that policy. We do allow employees to use their leave for something of that nature, but we do not provide the leave unless it is for a work-related subpoena. So we simply were adding the word work-related in front of the word subpoena. So I am not sure what we need to do to move forward with this. I know it is a first reading only, but I've never had this happen, so I do not know how to.
Yeah, it's not coming up. We'll send this out. The change that is being recommended, again, is just adding the word work-related in front of that. But we will send out a clean copy because we'll have to figure out why this is happening because it appears on this screen but does not appear on this screen. And so, yeah. But we can send that out, and then we'll make sure that when we post on the 23rd, that the attachment is appearing correctly. Because
So instead of voting on this, are we voting on it another time?
Yeah, this is just
We're-
for a
This was not an
consent
This is just
item. This is
information.
not an action item.
So the DC local one is the one that?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
All right, so we'll move down to resolution of the board delegating authority to accept a contract employee's resignation effective at the end of the school year or submitted before the penalty-free resignation date.
Are there any questions about this item?
Any questions?
That's at the end of June, correct? 45 days before the school starts?
Yes, that is correct. There's a contract deadline in the state of Texas that's 45 days prior to the first date of the instructional year. And what we're actually doing is in Update 118, there was an exhibit included that boards could choose to adopt in the form of a resolution that allows, in addition to delegating authority to Dr. Harrington to accept a resignation upon receipt, it would also give me, as the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, that same delegated authority, such that we are able to quickly, when a resignation comes in, we can sign it. Dr. Harrington would obviously sign it if he were here, and if not, I could sign it, and that would allow us to post quickly, promptly. It does not allow me to accept a resignation after that deadline. That would reside with the superintendent.
And if it's inside the 45 days, say it's day before school starts and someone resigns, can we hold their certificate still?
Absolutely, we can. Now, I will say that there is a statute in Texas that says that if someone attempts to resign after the 45-day deadline has passed, which we published that to our employees from September forward, October forward, that a district can choose to hold that employee until either a suitable replacement is found or to hold that employee, period. And then there are some laws or some rules, rather, that allow us to make a report to the State Board of Educators certification. And that list is very short compared to what it used to be. But if we choose to do that, and if the board approves to do that, then Dr. Harrington can send a letter to the State Board of Educators certification, and they will then make a ruling on whether to sanction an employee's certificate if the employee is certified.
If it's a promotion, then do we release them, or do we still hold them?
We have always worked with the incoming district, and we've just tried to be a good neighbor, but also work to ensure our students were taken care of. And so far, I've never had a situation where we weren't able to work with another human resources department and find a runway that worked for both districts. Great question.
All right, we are down into reports and presentations. 8.01, disbursements for the month of April 2022. Any questions on disbursements? All right, district benchmark assessment, DBA report. Dr. Norgard.
I am bringing my last DBA report of the 22-23 school year, but never fear, there is still MAP and Reading 3D and M-Class still to go. For that reason, though, because this is the last one, I wanted to get this data to you before Start EOC, so it's a bunch of tests coming at once that I might have otherwise spread out. So if you've looked at this report already, you notice several slides are gray. I still wanted you to have all the information in your hands, but as far as what slides I'm going to stop on and speak to, if it's grayed out, that was just for your information. But if anyone has a question, please stop me. I am happy to speak to them, but they follow the same pattern, and I think you're kind of used to what it is you're looking at this point. So I'm going to jump here before I speak to math. We do have 3rd through 6th math, and just reminding you that we'll see this in particular with 6th grade. DBA 1 is sometimes higher than DBA 2, unlike our others that grow through the year, because that DBA 1 in math is a partial. It's only what they've covered up to that year, so it tends to be a little bit higher than one that's a full, and you'll see that pattern. And a reminder again, the traditional students were used last year, not our OLO students, for the trend data. So we can see, compared to where we were last year, that we are improving at all 3 threshold levels, and it meets the masters in particular getting really close to our pre-pandemic level and exceeding the minimum performance objective targets of what we're looking for this year at all 3 levels. I'm not going to stop on the gray. I still want to explain. It's a bad habit. I'm so sorry. Okay, so in 4th grade, we see double-digit green arrows everywhere from where we were last year. It's very exciting because also I just have to call your attention to meets and masters compared to where we were pre-pandemic. We've wanted to retire that phrase, the fourth grade conundrum. Conundrum no more. We are well above where we were pre-pandemic. At meets and masters, approaches, those students that, you know, are really still needing that intervention, we still got to keep targeting that group. But it's exciting to see that our meets and masters are coming back above a pre-pandemic level. Yes?
Look at this different. I think Darla and Conrad may look at it too. As a principal, I would include 2019 and 2020. I just go from 2018-19 to 21-22. On fourth grade math, you're down really 4 from 18 and 19 before the pandemic, but you're up 11 on meets, and then you're up 12 on masters. So if I was talking to my faculty, I don't think I would include those 2 years, because you're trying to get back to where you were before the pandemic. So I don't want to mention anything negative to my staff. I need to get them back to where they were before. So when I look at all these, I don't look at the ones in the middle. I compare this year's to 2018-19.
And those are all different views of the data. You're right. We want to get back to pre-pandemic. For perspective, though, sometimes it is important to notice when we saw double-digit drops to recognize that may or may not happen in 1 year, that some of them may take more of a couple of years recovery. So absolutely our goal is to get back to 18, 19. Each row gives a different filter to the data. Well, and teachers don't always look at this the same way. Yeah. But teachers are looking at student level data. They're, you know, I'm reporting to you at district. Really, the teachers are looking at how did Andy do on DBA 1 and how is he doing on DBA 2? They're not looking at, but last year my students were here and this year. They are looking at individual students when we're talking about teachers. I'm looking at big picture because I'm reporting whole district. Okay. And that is beautiful. Numbers can tell lots of different stories. So. Okay. I do think it's important to look at this student cohort performance history, because here we're not talking about a different group of how did last year's fourth graders do. This is this year's fourth graders and how are they doing in third grade. So this is pretty much a visual of what we were seeing, that, you know, meets and masters climbing and our approaches there tends to have kind of leveled off. So we know that we have more work we can do with students that are perhaps kind of jumping back and forth across that line of, I've got it, no I don't, I've got it, no I don't. So really targeting in for them, what are those pieces that you don't have and how can we solidify that learning for you? Fifth grade has green arrows, and we just won't look at, or Mr. Cargile will not look at the row before that. We are, again, at meets and masters well above the pre-pandemic, so I can give you a +6 and a +14, I guess, if we want to look at those numbers differently. But we are down at approaches compared to pre-pandemic, but up from last year and doing well with our targets. Our fifth grade student cohort performance growing at all of the levels. Sixth grade math, we saw improvement at all of our thresholds and at or above our pre-pandemic standards. We have more years. They've had more years of testing to really look at how this is growing. This is in particular where I wanted to point out that the DBA 1 to DBA 2 seems to come down. That happens frequently at sixth grade. We have that history of data where you can see that up and down. It's kind of a little bit of a rebound when you look at DBA 1 down and they come back up. That's a very predictable pattern for us. So this is not an unusual trend that we have in the data. So for math, for all the subjects I'm going to talk about, we are in that period of review. Really, we're starting STAR and EOC right now, so they are concluding their review and remediation, and our coordinators have really given teachers some very specific skills, activities, things to work with their students based on that DBA data. So for science, we're going to look at 5th, 8th, and biology. 5th and 8th grade, because we don't test science every year, it is important to remember that in the 5th grade science, they are tested on 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade standards. And at 8th, they are tested on 6th, 7th, and 8th grade standards. So 5th and 8th grade teachers do have to look closely at previous year's performance, not on STAR, but on our local assessments and where we know that students may have been struggling, so that we're sure we have shored up all of those positions across 3 grade levels. Because TEA does not calculate a growth measure in science, it's not given every year, or even when it is given back-to-back, grade 8 science and then biology, there's not enough overlap because grade 8 science is hitting all kinds of areas. So we don't have cohort data because that's not an area where we look at a growth measure. So at 5th grade science, at approaches and meets, we are coming back from next year, but we are not to our pre-pandemic standards where we need to be. We are close to the goals that were set at approaches and meets based on last year's students, and we are looking for ways to intervene with those students that are maybe at meets and not yet pushing to masters. So for this group, I did show this data since not cohort to see the height of the bars, the difference between the DBA and STAR. We do tend to, with those targeted intervention, get some elevated growth. 8th grade science, we've improved across all 3 thresholds, and here we are much closer to our pre-pandemic standards. And again, approaches and meets, we are getting there. It's masters. So in math, it seemed to be across multiple grade levels. It's approaches where we weren't getting, but meets and masters were far exceeding. Science, we're seeing it closer to targeted approaches and meets and need more growth at masters. You can see in a typical years the improvement we would see from DBA to STAR. For biology, here is a group in science that was struggling more at approaches. And we pre-pandemic were very strong compared in the state. This weren't just our high standards. We were well outperforming the state average at approaches, meets, and masters on biology. So we are working to regain those kind of pre-pandemic standard and performance. So we are close to the targets, but still have more growth to recover. And that's the kind of change we see from DBA to STAR. So science, again, there's review, a little bit different strategies that are included in those reviews, some content videos, vocabulary activities, and really honing in on the 5E model that they use in science, where students can, engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. Social studies, this is our last test. We are improving over last year, getting back to pre-pandemic standards, but a little more to go there. But we are meeting those targets that were set based on the minimum growth we expected over last year's standards. And you can see we don't move a lot in social studies. We have not for a couple of years, but back in 18-19, we were seeing big intervention gains here. So it's all about targeting that review and what can we recapture between what the DBA is telling us, where do students need support, and let's be sure they get that support before STAR. And here's how they're going to get it, with some targeted review lessons. We spend a lot of time in social studies with language support. Our social studies department was one of our earliest adopters with really working with our ESL students. How do we make sure that they have language support? Because so often with the content, this is 8th grade U.S. history. A lot of our language learners are not coming with any kind of background in U.S. history. So not only is the content not familiar, like perhaps in math, I can at least have some familiarity with the math happening. It's the language I'm struggling with. Social studies really struggles with both. There's no hook to the content and needing that language support. So lots of language support in social studies. We have it everywhere, but it's been here for a long time for that reason. Questions?
Any questions? On the 9th grade biology, that does not include the 8th grade biology students at Central, right? Where do they factor
This
in?
one, yes, it does. Yes,
Does
Dr.
include
Scoggins,
them?
our science coordinator, is
Okay.
here. We don't separate that one out. For algebra, I give you the 8th and the 9th grade separately because district-wide algebra is 8th grade is a third of the 8th grade classes in algebra, and we only have those 2 sections at Central, so it's a much smaller percentage. I don't report those separately.
Yeah, I didn't know if they took the 8th grade science test or if they take the biology.
They do not, and that is why we have to have those students take the ACT when they are in high school. For students that take algebra in 8th grade and never take the 8th grade math star, they need a measure every year of the star plus a high school measure. So for algebra, their high school measure is whenever they take SAT or ACT, they get a math measure. We need to be sure students that took 8th grade biology need to take ACT in high school because it has a science section. So we do have to track those cohorts of students.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you. All right, now we're to revision DEC, compensation and benefits, leaves and absences. No? Am I in the right place?
This is
Yes.
DEC regulation, so it's an information item. And are there any questions about this particular regulation?
Any questions? All right. Thank you. Scorecard data, goals 1 and 3. Mr. Streeter?
Mr. Campos, back to your question. They both qualified, both groups qualified from a state competition, and they're representing us for the national competition. So thank you. You bet. All right, very briefly, our scorecard, goals 1 and 3. And so again, it's 1.6, increased student attendance. And if you look at the blue line, you can see we've done a nice rebound. If you recall, January and February, we had that big dip. And I looked at our attendance for last week, and we're at 95.7. So again, we're even increasing from there. So that's good news for us, and we really want to be above that the last 6 weeks. Thank you. Any questions?
How low are we on our enrollment from last year for the entire district?
So compared from last year to this year, our total number, Dobie, what are we sitting at? If you give me 1 second, I can have that answer for you. I've got it on my phone, but I want to say 600 or 700. Yes, sir. And it might be well, from what we projected.
344 down from projection. We're still down
that's
from the
projected, though.
pre-pandemic numbers, which is the 800-ish number. But just from projections, we're down, again, around 3-something?
Yeah, so, yeah, so two different numbers. Our projection is about 350, and where we were pre-pandemic is probably between 700 and 800.
But are you asking just what were we last year compared to this year straight up?
Okay, yeah, give me a second, and I can probably find that for you.
All right.
And then right in line with our student attendance, our staff attendance has also been trending up, and we're at 96.21% for the 5th 6 weeks.
All right, any questions on this information? Thank you. All right, resignations and retirements. Any questions on those? All right, we'll move into action items. 9.01, consider approval of update to 2022-2023 staffing table.
So you received all of this information in your Friday update 2 weeks ago, and then this week, as a reminder, any questions on these units?
So just one clarification from me, and Mike, this might go to you. But we talked about potentially adding coaches to our 9th grade plan. There's proposed coaches here. Is that separate and apart from our 9th grade plan?
Yes, the units that are proposed tonight will go to high school.
Okay.
They will go towards helping coaches not have to coach during their conference period.
So this more or less goes to the conference period issue that we addressed last time, but not necessarily a trigger that would implement the 9th grade super team plan.
Totally separate.
Okay.
Yeah, so everyone's clear, we are not voting on the plan that we heard about last week. This is not the busing of kids or anything like that. That's still a separate issue. All right, any other questions on this?
But it does give the 2 theater teachers, assistant theater teachers.
Yes, they are in there.
All right, this is an action item, so I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the new units as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the new units as submitted. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, 9.02, consider approval of revisions to board policy DC local employment practices. Ms. Tuttle?
So this is the policy that I believe you had a question about, Mr. Brown.
Yes, thank you. So just currently, we have designated authority to the superintendent from June to August.
That's correct.
The proposal is to expand that designation to allow him to hire personnel, principal and below, to March 1st to August 31st,
So
correct?
it's actually anything under principal, so we would always bring principals back to the board, but yes, it is for March
Right.
1st through August 31st.
So, and this kind of streamlines the hiring process.
That is correct.
My question then is, why not do it from all year long? I mean, I'm not sure why March 1st to August 31st has greater significance than the rest of the year. I mean, when we hire anybody from principal below, they don't come back to the board, we don't meet them. It seems like it's an unnecessary step not to designate authority to the superintendent year-round.
That's a great question, and that's why I wanted to make sure that you had the data from some of the surrounding districts that I meet with on a monthly basis and how they handle that. I believe 6 of them do provide the superintendent with the authority to hire positions below principal year-round. Of course, where we came up with the March 1st date is since we're bringing the staffing table a month earlier next year at the end of February, we knew that that would align better to our hiring practice. But certainly, if the board would like to entertain a discussion about changing that, I know that based on the conversation that Dr. Harrington and I had today regarding the question, I have brought with me a mocked-up version, but that certainly is up to the board and whether or not the board wants to entertain that discussion.
But it's certainly something I would like to entertain. I think it would streamline the process. I don't think it's necessarily in our purview for part of the year to have the hiring decisions and for part of the year for Joe to have it. I really think this should be a Joe authority. I've got the amended version here if everybody wants to take a look. This language would allow us to designate the authority to Joe year-round.
And I will also point out, I think this information was in the Friday update, but just for our public here, what this does is it allows there to not be a delay between the letter of intent that we send from Human Resources and the contract. Currently, thank you to you all for allowing us to post earlier this year. We have already processed 91 professional I'm not going to say hires because some of them haven't made it to you all yet, but 91 letters of intent have been offered for professional positions in 5 weeks. But within that 5 weeks, many of those have waited 2 to 3 weeks to get their contract. So just for those who are in the audience, I want to clarify that what the intent behind bringing this forward in either iteration would be to allow there to be a little bit less time between that letter of intent and the contract, and that would help us to be more competitive.
Well, this feels like it would certainly help this competitive environment that we're in right now. Is this similar to what it looks like for the districts that are doing it this way?
It is, and actually, our TASB consultant, Amy Kadlachek, always reviews policies before we upload them for you all. And so when this question came up today, I did ask her to take a look at what some of the verbiage was in other districts to make sure that we were in line with that. I just want to also very overtly state that it will always be our intent to bring assistant principals before you. The only time that we would ever choose to use that piece of this policy authority for Dr. Harrington would be if we were in that time period where Mr. Cargill spoke of the 45-day deadline.
Right.
And we were trying to, at a time when there was no board meeting or there was no work for our week of shutdown, that would be the only time that we would ever forego bringing those assistant principals forward. Our practice has been to utilize this for teachers.
All right, any other discussion on this? So what we're actually looking at here is not adopting the one that's in board docs, but potentially adopting this amended version?
Ms. Tuttle,
Yes.
while I'm definitely in favor of this, why do all districts not do this? Go the other way. Why would we not do this?
That's really about your comfort level and the decision that you make. There are lots of variances. You have everything from the summer months to, as we were proposing, certain times of the year that are associated with hiring, all the way to some districts that don't provide this authority. And honestly, it's really about what you're comfortable with, and it's also about how competitive you want us to be able to be with the contract. At the end of the day, 3 years ago, a contract wasn't that big of a deal because they knew they were going to get that quickly, and it was all about the letter of intent. We have letters of intent being dropped in people's hands at job fairs, and we have contracts being given within 48 hours of the letter of intent. And that's not something we have been in a position to do. This would put us in that position.
So I move the board approve the revisions to board policy DC local as amended.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the policies of DEC local as amended. Excuse me. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, consider approval of Chapter 21 contracts. Any questions on these contracts? I'll accept a motion.
I move the board approve or renew the issue the Chapter 21 contracts as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the board approve to renew or issue the Chapter 21 contracts as submitted. Please vote. That motion passes. All right, item 9.04, consider approval of donations. Any questions on this item? I'll accept a motion.
I move to approve the May 22 donations as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the May 2022 donations as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, we are into other business. And before we get into all this, I wanted to take a point of personal privilege, and I wanted to thank Mary Stokic for stepping up and serving as our Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Schools in the interim while we were working on finding a replacement as Conrad Streeter moved into his position. So we thank you very much, and it's always great to see you at meetings. So come by anytime. All right, 10.01, opportunity for board members to request items be placed on future board agendas. Anybody have anything? All right, review the board activity chart for board members. It's over here. Okay, we are into May.
We're about to see each other a lot.
Yeah, this is where we're gonna get a lot of FaceTime. Looks like we have everything covered but the Bell High School Senior Award Ceremony, May 19th.
I'll be in Denver that weekend, so I can't.
I'll put myself down for that. Okay, look like we're covered there. All right, we're down to review of board operating procedures, and let's see, I wanted to combine that with item 10.05, presentation of board governance for continuous improvement rubric and process, since I know Mr. Brown and Ms. Cole have been working on the board operating procedures as part of their board goal. I thought we could just combine those into one talk.
So this is, one's for Joe. Like it's the same thing. So what I'm passing around right now, Chris, do you mind if I start?
Go for it.
Okay. Is our goal 2, which is demonstrating proficiency in the use of a systems approach to continuous improvement as measured by a CI rubric. So what our first action item was to meet and discuss a review and revision of the board self-assessment, which we normally do in November. So we have done that, which I'll pass out now. But let me just go through what else we're doing. We had our mid-cycle meeting earlier today to ensure that we were on target. Item number 2 is to use continuous improvement quality tools to develop a draft document for the metric scorecard of the academic data that is on the website and that we look at in board meetings. We have begun that review, and we will continue that through the summer and bring that back to you when we have that done. We're working in conjunction with Dr. Harrington and the ELT on that. Number 3 is to actually participate in our board self-assessment, and so we will be doing that in November, and we'll talk about that again as we get closer to that. And the document that I want to show you is about that. And then we will participate in a training on continuous improvement. That will be happening also in November. And then we will be working on a review and a revision of our board operating procedures. Chris and I have talked about this several times. We intend to work pretty intently on it over the summer, where we will take that document, which the bones of it is good, but it's kind of all over the place. And it's time, as a continuous improvement district, to look at it and see how we can enhance it. So one of the things that we'd like to do, other than, just identify that, we asked all of you to review it today, for the meeting today, but we'd love for you to get with either Chris or I on any suggested changes that you have so that we can incorporate those in our work over the summer. Does that sound good to everyone? Okay, so then the other document I want to pass out is this one, and I don't know if I have enough for you, Dr. Harrington, so I'm going to keep it.
You're so good at sharing.
So if you remember the document before, let me just go back in history just a little bit to remind ourselves. Last year, we did our board self-assessment using this document. The 2 years prior to that, our board self-assessment was using the Lone Star governance document. And then prior to that, we had used this. So we had that sort of weird time in between. And so this will really only be our second continuous year in recent history that we'll use this same document, although we've made a few changes to it. The document we used last year had the board's rating, but it had a column for each of the words: progressing, proficient, and advanced, if you'll remember. And it took up quite a bit of the document. So what we did here is we just changed it to a rating number. So progressing is 1, proficient is 2, and advanced is 3. We'll give ourselves a 1, 2, or a 3, knowing full well what the will mean, right? We'll still have our data source for whatever we measure ourselves as, but we've also added just a little bit of board self-reflection. What is your internal score? What do you see yourself scoring in this area as you contribute to the board? Now, we're not going to ever ask any of you to share your score, your individual score with the rest of us, but it's just a way of self-reflecting.
telling me to grade my own paper.
For that part.
That's what you're telling me.
Yeah. How do you contribute to the team in that area? You probably are, Andy. You probably are a 3 all the way down. One of the ways we thought this would be helpful, and I got some of this from a couple of sessions that I've gone to on board self-assessments, was if we look at the numbers, and we'll be able to give ourselves a total score for each section. And then we'll be able to sort of track our progress over time on each section and as a whole. And whether or not we stick with that, I don't know, but it felt like an interesting way of looking at it sort of over time and as our board changes and people come and go.
So you're saying like 1 through 12 at the bottom? This would be
That's
a
one
score?
section. That's the governance section. And the other thing I wanted to note, I almost forgot, about the governance section is last year when we did this, we had this whole conversation, if you remember, on where does continuous improvement fit in with all of this? And we made the decision that continuous improvement and governance really go hand in hand. And so we have made sure to identify the CI processes within the governance piece. Questions?
So are you gonna add the bottom where it says total?
We'll have like a separate sheet at the end.
Okay. All for each section. I got you.
One of the things, Chris, do you want to speak to having the old document when we go through the assessment?
Sure, that that was one of the things I wanted to see because I think I'm the only one who didn't participate in the self-assessment last year. So I wanted to see where you all thought you were at that point, just to kind of give me a framework to go into this particular self-assessment. So when we send out the actual self-assessment to do and then come together as a board, I think what you'll have is this year's self-assessment as well as last year's self-assessment to kind of refresh to see, as far as for y'all, refresh where you were, for me to refresh as far as, so I know where the board was.
Okay, and we're shooting for this in November?
Yes.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
That's good.
Get us those, any changes, any suggestions to board operating procedures, try to get with one of us, within the next few weeks.
And I like the changes that you suggested in the board operating procedures.
Good.
Yeah, I think that was a lot of cleanup work there. All right, so now we're gonna go to 10.04 plus deltas for the employee banquet 2022.
Yes, and we're going to use the plus delta process we used the last time. If you can write plus or delta on your sticky note and then start filling out your plus deltas on the employee banquet, and then I will read them and post them.
Feels like so long ago, I can't even remember.
I can tell you my delta is I need sneakers to be standing that long. My feet got sore.
Don't even complain.
I know.
Seriously.
I know, that's exactly, I think that was the exact response I got.
I got one.
I think in my 5 years, it's the best employee banquet. Maybe just because we haven't been able to have it for a couple of years, it felt so good, but it's great.
Oops, this one's gonna be upside down, sorry. I didn't realize I had one of those back and forth ones.
No, this is the first one I've written in 10 years, so I should be proud that I've.
Good job, Andy.
The first one you've done?
Somebody take a picture.
That's random.
And I always lose, so I know what the answer is gonna be. Yeah. Yes, I will, because I've lost every time I've brought it up. You'll see.
Okay, so let's start with the pluses. So we have music, and I'm going to stay at the podium so you can hear, and then I'll put them up. And we have another plus, the live band, Dr. Burnett, and the great energy. Another plus, loved the music. And another plus, loved Dr. Burnett. All right. So deltas, oh, got another plus. Love that we changed from being at the end of the handshake line. Yeah.
I missed the handshake line.
There was.
I liked it.
There was.
I know.
Yeah.
No, I said, Donna sit next to me, and I said, I want to go handshake. She goes, no, you don't.
All right, deltas. Teachers should sit in the front row, move the board off to the side, and open it. Yep.
It's their night. We should sit opposite of the band, not in front of the band. Off to the side, I think the teachers and faculty should sit up front because it's their celebration.
Yeah, I mean,
Would ever disagree with that?
Yeah.
we'd be fine if we were off to the corner. We just have to be able to get to the stage, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'd still have to be up near the front, but if we moved off to the side, that would be easy.
I'm not gonna get any arguments on that
Yeah.
idea.
Well, one time I wanted to move to the back when we were at the tech center for the something, I wanted to sit at the back and y'all wanted to sit at the front.
Okay, award table setup. Was that the order that they were in?
It wasn't really, I mean, it was just kind of a weird situation because we had, I think Sylvia was up there, right? Handing me the awards, and I was trying to hand them to the people as they were coming up. But since she was in front of me, they were all walking to her to get the, so it was just kind of it's almost like there needs to be more space, but I'm not sure exactly what could be done to
Was
fix it.
there enough room for her to stand behind the table?
There wasn't
And
the way it was set up.
I thought of that too, but I believe it went right up to the thing. So I think we could adjust that,
Yeah.
but that would solve that problem.
Yeah, it would pinch between the table and the podium, so
Yeah.
people would be squeezing through a really tight spot, so.
Make sure, I think we know who will be doing what part of the program, and the question, the benediction. But we also,
My bad.
What happened?
I forgot to tell her.
Dawn sits down, she goes,
Nice.
look what I'm doing.
What-
He didn't know that I was coming, so he
Yeah.
was thrown off.
but there was another, I think we need to look for a master copy of the book too, because what we ended up with, we had, oh, okay, well then I'll wait.
Because we're carrying our scripts around too, and
Oh.
David was
Yeah.
like running all over trying to give us our scripts.
Have a podium manual, and so what it ended up happening is Dr. Burnett had his up there, but his was updated for him. And I do think we're just gonna have to go ahead and get a master one up there. Yep.
The rest of us to
Yep.
share, because he's not gonna want to share his.
No, and again, he was working off of an older version, but it was fine for him. But I was worried about if someone came up and jumped into his, it may not be current. Now, we had other copies, but again, it got into, I almost wanted to roll one up and, and have it in my pocket, yep.
And I don't want to push him out the door. Like, another thing I thought too, obviously we want him as long as he will do it, but do we have a plan for when he no longer MCs our big events?
Well, succession planning is always important, so I can tell you we have had that conversation.
And Deanne had.
Yeah,
She's not
Deanne,
prepared to,
yeah.
she's not prepared to tell you
Okay.
yet.
She may not have told them yet. But no,
A few years.
I mean,
but-
he does an outstanding job. He does an outstanding job, and I think we are gonna have to look who can fill that void. And we actually have had some conversations, but that's something we need to make sure whoever is doing that level of event, that we can get them involved in other events prior to that, because, I mean, that is, I mean, he is an outstanding MC. And figure out to, stop the long walk for the recipients. I think a lot of that, though, what a problem to have that we filled the Hearst Convention Center. Over 800 people at that event. And I will say, I so agree with the one that put energy. That room was alive. Yeah. And so there was a lot of energy in that room, and that was quite an event.
I don't mind that long walk for them when they've won that award, because it adds to everybody being able to look at them, and, you know, the ones that are crying on the way up.
And the
I
band
don't mind
playing
that.
while they're up there,
Yeah.
like the music kind of built the energy for them to get up there.
Yeah.
And I feel like everybody got their moment. Like, that's what I didn't put, and I'll write it down, but I feel like we had so many retirees, but no one was sitting there thinking, when is this gonna end? Every single person got their moment.
Yeah.
With enough time and enough intention, and I think that was my best takeaway from this employee banquet, is every single person got their moment to shine and be
I like
recognized.
that someone suggested that he slow down on some part because he felt, I guess, rushed at some point, and then he slowed down. You could take, everybody
Yeah.
could hear everything he was saying about the person.
Everybody got time. I loved that.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right, thank you. We are ready for open forum number 2. Do we have any requests for the board for non-agenda items? Nothing? No. All right. Any need for a second closed session, Dr. Harrington?
I do not have anything.
All right, then I will accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.